is here. All of these amazing volunteers and ambassadors, these elected officials who take some time out of their campaigns to campaign for us. Each one of you who is willing to believe that we can make the difference for this country. We just got a poll back last week. And who knows if you can trust these things these days, but the poll says we are 2 points ahead of Tom. Excitement that you are bringing to this campaign. You have left me more inspired, more encouraged, more hopeful than I have ever been. To the disappointment that far too many people in this state face right now. These school teachers that I love so much who are working 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet. Veterans who come back from serving this country as far back as Korea or Vietnam or the first Gulf War or the wars that we're fighting all over the world right now, who find that they cannot get into a VA to see a mental health care provider, that psychiatrist or psychologist who can make the difference for them. Too many people who go without health care in a state that is the least insured in the United States of America. Young men dying of diabetes in the wealthiest, the most powerful country that the world has ever known. School teachers succumbing to the flu because they may have insurance, they may have what they call health care, but they may not have $119 in their checking account, which is the copay on the flu medication that would have saved their lives in a state whose largest provider of mental health care services is the county jail system in the state of Texas. People so desperate that their schizophrenia, their bipolar disorder, their depression, untreated because they're uncared for, they're uninsured. No one has been fighting for them, at least not successfully, that they get arrested on purpose, to get locked up in the county jail where by law they're guaranteed to get that roof over their head, that meal served to them, those clothes that they may be lacking, and also the prescriptions of the medications that make life bearable for them at a cost of $400 a night to you as a taxpayer, locking them up, but locking up their potential to work a job, to finish their education, to raise their family, to rock out to Bidi Bidi Banda here today with us and participate in our future. And for the bargain price of under $15 a day, we can provide outpatient mental health care services to them. Make sure that they're free to live to their full potential, contribute to their maximum capacity. What I'm trying to tell you, so for those veterans for whom we care so much, those school teachers who sacrifice, we want to make sure that we honor those who are going without health care today, those parents of children with pre-existing conditions, medically expensive, medically complex, whose only protection right now under law is the Affordable Care Act, and they know they've got a junior senator from the state of Texas who wants to repeal every single word therein, meaning repealing those protections for those pre-existing conditions. We must meet that disappointment in these very tough times, not with anger. We can't be organized against anyone or anything or any other political party. What we have to be organized for is the greatness of the United States of America and our willingness, every single one of us, to come together at this defining moment of truth for this country and make sure that we live up to our full potential. Republicans, if you are here, you're in the right place. Democrats, if you're here, you're in the right place. Independents, I'm glad you came. And those who cannot vote for whatever reason, you're just as important to me as anyone else. That's why we show up everywhere for everyone, every single day. 254 counties strong in the state of Texas. We're going to meet these challenges square on. And I love what Julian and Joaquin Castro just said right now about sacrifice and service that has preceded us. It's inspiring to me to think about those who risked their lives for this country, went overseas back in the 1940s to make sure that we could preserve the world's greatest democracy, and in fact make the world safe for democracy going forward. Those who served in every war that followed, willing to sacrifice their lives for this country. Let's think about and remember their sacrifice and their service, and those who are serving right now as we enjoy our comfort, our freedom, one another. This amazing band that just played and will play again after I speak. There are some who are literally on the front lines in Afghanistan, 17 years and counting, who are out there tonight in Syria, in Iraq, in Somalia, in Yemen, in Libya, and in Niger, and so many other countries. For us, fewer than 1% of Americans have served since 9/11. So much is resting on the shoulders of so few right now. We cannot let them down, and that means not securing an election for Democrats, or for Republicans for that matter, but always keeping in mind the common good and the common goal at this deeply divided, highly polarized moment. It's never been this bad, at least in my 46 years on the planet. The country's calling not for more partisanship, more name-calling, more smallness, more pettiness. We're done with that stuff. It's calling for our greatness, for us to be strong and confident and bold and big-hearted, and that knows no partisan definition. I think about the same thing when I think about those great civil rights leaders who secured a more perfect union. We're not there yet. We may never get there, but they got us a little bit closer. Also willing to risk their lives, and in some cases to lose their lives, to secure civil rights not just for themselves, but for every American, whether they were marching across the Edmund Pettus Bridge with our colleague John Lewis, getting beaten within an inch of their lives, whether they were on hunger strikes, protesting the fact that those who picked the food that feeds this country were treated like second-class citizens. I want us to remember their service, their sacrifice, the greatness that preceded them right now. We are their inheritors, and we've got to make sure that we're living up to the example that they set. As I came in, I got to meet a member of Brownsville's finest as I walked in, and I think about members of law enforcement, sheriff's deputies, police officers, those who serve in federal law enforcement with the Border Patrol and help to keep our communities safe. I think about my uncle Raymond O'Rourke, who was a sheriff's deputy in El Paso County, was the captain of the El Paso County Jail, who, when I was knocking door to door in my first run for Congress, I remember somebody answering their door. I introduced myself to them, and they said, "Your name's Beto O'Rourke, you must be related to Raymond O'Rourke." I was an inmate in the El Paso County Jail. Raymond was my jailer, and I didn't want to be there, but I gotta tell you, Raymond treated me with respect, and he treated me with dignity, and he believed in me despite my circumstances at that moment. And I think about Raymond, I think about every member of law enforcement who risked their lives as well. They are sworn to serve and to protect not just some of us, but all of us. They're willing to risk their lives to make sure that we are better and safer communities. I want to make sure that we stand up and remember their service and their sacrifice as well. So let's have a round for everyone who's willing to serve this country in whatever way, in whatever capacity they can. And let's make sure that we live up to the sacrifices that they have made so that we could be here today. For those veterans that I mentioned earlier, this country's so quick to send them to war all over the world, and yet unable to provide the resources to ensure that everyone who comes back has a roof over their head, is able to move on in the next step of their lives, their career, their education, that small business that they want to start. A country that sees 20 veterans a day take their lives, most of them unable or unwilling to go into a VA and see that provider who will be able to save their lives. I want to make sure that each one of us guarantees that we find the resources to hold up our end of the bargain, that no veteran waits to see that mental health care provider who can make the life or death difference for them, that this country $21 trillion in debt for the wars that we have fought, the tax breaks that we have cut, doesn't use that debt as an excuse not to pay our end of the obligation for them. I want to make sure that each and every veteran who comes back to this country is treated with the respect and the dignity that they have earned by serving us. And I want to make sure that going forward, all of us, before we ask anyone to put their life in harm's way, that we understand why we fight the wars that we fight. I mentioned 17 years in Afghanistan, 27 years in Iraq. I was a high school senior, 18 years old, when I remember George H.W. Bush announcing that we were going to use United States military force. That means putting U.S. service members' lives on the line in Kuwait and in Iraq. 27 years later, no end in sight, no definition of victory, no commonly understood strategy. And yet women and men are still willing to go over there and serve this country. What if, and this is a bold idea from the people of Texas, what if we decided that we're not going to put the foreign policy of the United States of America on the backs and shoulders of 18 and 19 and 20-year-olds? What if we decided we were going to try to find peaceful resolutions to the problems of the countries of the world? We're going to try to find diplomatic solutions to the United States aims across the globe, but we're not going to try to solve every single problem with the United States military. We're going to try to find that common ground, even with our enemies, where necessary, to make sure that we can bring these U.S. service members back to Brownsville, in El Paso, into Texas, and to this country, and we can begin to again invest in America, to be here, to make sure that they are here. What if we decided, for those school teachers that I was just talking about, half of whom are working a second or a third job, all of whom right now are required to teach to a high-stakes, high-pressure, standardized test that in no way adequately measures their performance in the classroom or that child's performance. These amazing public servants, so many of whom have taken out loans for the privilege of teaching our kids. When they were student teachers, they were paying for the privilege to be in that classroom and learn their trade and their craft and the ability to connect with that kid and that child's lifelong love of learning, only to find when the teachers in Texas retire. It's been 13 years since this state has paid a cost of living adjustment. That means as the cost of medication and gasoline and household expenses goes up, their real income comes down every single year. And to add insult to injury, just this last year, the state of Texas, in its infinite wisdom, decided their healthcare costs would double, putting the god-awful decision before those retired teachers who deserve a retirement of dignity, not one of poverty. Do I pay for the medications? Do I pay for the food on the table? Do I pay for the note on the mortgage? Do I help out my child, who may also be teaching in the classroom and cannot make ends meet in her own household right now? What are we thinking? And how, I ask you, are we going to be able to recruit the next generation of teachers into these classrooms? We were going door to door in McAllen, Texas, a little bit earlier this year. A woman answered her door and invited us into her home, where she also runs a small business. That's right. A small business that she started in part to afford the higher education for her 3 daughters. And I asked her about her daughters and what they want to pursue after they finish college. And she told me, well, they want to be teachers, but there's no way in the world we're going to let them do that. And I said, well, why not? And she said, we know too many teachers in the classroom right now who are too frustrated, who are unable to pay their bills, who want to connect with those kids that they sacrifice so much for. Kids who show up on that first day of school without a square meal in their system, without enough hours of sleep to be ready to learn. Kids who may come from mixed status families, who don't know if that dad and mom that has raised them is going to come home at the end of the day or will be deported back to a country that that child has never come to. I can only imagine the anxiety, right? And yet, when that kid comes in the front door of that classroom, that teacher is all smiles, all love, doing everything within her power to make sure that she brings out the best in that child. If we have any hope of continuing to attract the best and brightest into this necessary profession of public service, they must see how those who preceded them in those same classrooms are being treated, and it must be a positive story. What if we decided, as the people of Brownsville, as the people of the Rio Grande Valley, as the people of Texas, that we were going to lead the way in making sure that we pay every teacher a true living wage, that we allow them to connect with their children, that we treat them like gold once they're retired, and make sure that they can live that retirement one of dignity and happiness. I think that's the right thing to do. What if we decided that we're no longer going to cut tax breaks to corporations that are already sitting on record piles of cash? We're no longer going to send benefits to the very wealthiest in this country at a time of record income inequality, the worst it's been in the living memory of anyone in this room. What if we decided that instead of answering to political action committees or corporations or special interests, we were only going to represent people. We were only going to invest in them and in their communities. And that means in a state that refused to expand Medicaid and left $100 billion on the table, and we make up for lost time, decide to expand it now and cover more people so that they can live to their full potential. We introduce Medicare as an option on the exchanges so that we increase choice, drive down prices, and we take the lead, going from the least insured state in the country to the state that leads the way on guaranteed, high-quality, universal health care for every child, for every woman, for every man. And that means mental health care, that means primary health care, and that means for women in a state that leads the country in the maternal mortality crisis, 3 times as deadly for African American women in Texas, a state that has closed down so many of its family planning clinics, making it that much harder for women to get a cervical cancer screening, to see a family planning provider, to see a doctor or provider of any kind, that we're losing them faster than almost any other place in the developed world today. What if we said that universal health care also means the ability for every single woman to make her own decisions about her own body, access to a healthcare provider who make it possible? I think we can move that way as well. Let's stay focused then on the future. Let's make this campaign about and for the future, because the people of the future are counting on us right now. They're gonna wanna know that in 2018, when we still had a chance to get this right, on any of the issues that I just brought up, on others that may concern you, whether or not this will still be a country of laws or a country of men, whether we will decide that no man is above the law, no matter what position of public trust that he holds. What if we decide that the generations that follow, who are counting on us, need to know that this state, which understands the consequences of climate change perhaps better than any other, this state who in 2017, second hottest year on record for the globe, following the hottest year, which was the year before. But in 2017, we saw the greatest level of rainfall to land in the continental United States for as long as we have been keeping records in the continental United States. And in Houston, and in Nome, and in Orange, and in Port Arthur, and Beaumont, and Rockport, and Port Aransas, those communities have seen the third 500-year flood in just the last 5 years. And the scientists, we will still listen to them.
Yes.
300 years after the Enlightenment, they tell us that storms like Harvey will only become more frequent, more severe. It'll only be that much harder to rebuild Houston yet again. And in fact, if we do not change the course that we're on, This trajectory will land us to a place where human beings will no longer be able to live in the communities that I just mentioned, in much the same way that the droughts that they're going through right now in North Texas, in the Panhandle, and in the West, where we grow our cotton and our food, where we feed and clothe not just Texas and the country, but so much of the rest of the world. Those droughts will also become more frequent, more severe. They will undermine our ability to take care of ourselves or even live in those communities going forward. The people of the future, our kids and our grandkids and their descendants, are counting on us to make the right decisions right now. We can still be a proud, energy, independent country led by Texas. We can do it in a far more responsible way, and we can seize upon our lead in the generation of renewable energy, #1 in the country in wind, soon to be #1 in the country in solar. The fastest growing jobs in the U.S. today, wind and solar jobs. This is about the next generation and high-wage, high-value, high-skilled jobs for Texas. If we do this, let's make sure that we're focused, 1, on winning on the 6th of November, and 2, delivering and following through every single day the next 6 years on the very high expectations that we are setting for and by one another. Let's never again be divided by party. We cannot be too Republican or too Democrat or too independent to be part of this. Let's never again be divided by how long your family has been here. Some of you can count 10 generations in Brownsville. Some of you just got here 10 days ago. There are some who will be here in 10 minutes. All of them are important to the future of this country. One of the last things that I want to tell you, because this is something that we, the people of the border, los fronterizos, understand perhaps better than anyone else. Before you're a Republican or a Democrat, you're a Texan, you're an American, and before anything else, you're a human being. And we should start treating each other that way. When we see, though this was a decision of just one man, children taken from their parents after they have survived a 2,000-mile journey, and you have to ask yourself, how bad would things have to be for you to scoop up your little baby, to walk those hundreds of miles, maybe jump on top of a train, on the roof of a train known as La Bestia, or the Beast, to come here to our front door, to this country that has welcomed refugees and asylum seekers and immigrants for literally hundreds of years, and to find not the safety and salvation for which you risked your life, but to find your worst nightmare, that child taken from your arms by force if necessary. Standing in the Border Patrol station in McAllen, Texas, in the busiest Border Patrol sector in the country, the week after the president announced that zero tolerance policy. Going into a cell filled with mothers and their young children who had, in the words of the Border Patrol agents that I met, who were put in this terrible position, had arrested themselves. In other words, they didn't try to flee or evade detection. They turned themselves in. They had been rejected from the ports of entry, from setting foot in the United States of America lawfully to request asylum, and did what any human being, penniless, sunburned, desperate, seeking safety and salvation would do in that same position. They crossed where they could and turned themselves in to the women and men in green. And now here they were in this cell hours later. And I asked to talk to the first young woman that I met, and the Border Patrol agent asked her, ¿Cuántos años tiene usted? And she said, 17. 17-year-old mother with her 3-year-old child. And she said, you know what, she's too young for you to talk to. Who else would you like to talk to? And what do you say? There's a cell full of mothers at their most vulnerable, at their most desperate moment in their lives. And she said, well, I guess I'd like to talk to the woman behind her. And so she came out with her 7-year-old child. And that little girl was holding on to her mother's hand with all the life that was in her, as I imagined she had done for the last 3 weeks, as they had traveled those last 2,000 miles before just turning themselves in, literally hours before I met them. And the entire time that I was having this conversation with her mother, that little girl never once took her eyes off of her mother's face. That mother is everything in the world to her. And within hours, me being able to learn their story, that girl would be taken from that mother. She would be maybe locked in a cage with other young girls. That mother would be turned over to the Department of Justice. She would be prosecuted like a common criminal for doing what any human being in the same situation would do. She might very well be deported back to the very country from which she fled, a country that cannot promise the protection for that daughter that she risked her life for. And right now, though all of us stood up and demanded that our government stop doing this to people, stop the cruelty and the torture and the inhumanity that we're visiting on these children, and at least temporarily, our government listened to us right now. There are hundreds of kids, some in foster care homes in Michigan and Ohio, some in the Chihuahuan Desert, in a tent camp in Tornillo, Texas, just outside of El Paso, who have no idea tonight, months later, when or even if they're going to see that mother, that father who risked all for them again. We know it was the decision of one man to do this. But that stain now will define us unless we make it better, unless we insist that we never again take another child from another parent seeking asylum here, that we root out every single one of those kids right now, immediately. And that we, the people of the border, decide that on these issues that we understand better than anyone else, we will lead the way. Not just on asylum seekers, as important as that is, but it's got to include those dreamers, nearly 200,000 strong in the state of Texas, those dreamers who are serving right now overseas, putting their lives on the line, who are teaching in our classrooms, those dreamers who must be freed from the fear of deportation by being made U.S. citizens right now so that they too can contribute to their full potential. And this message for our colleagues in Congress and in the national government, especially those who've never enjoyed a meal at Taco Palenque or been to the Rio Grande Valley or seen El Paso and the Chihuahuan Desert. Si queremos asegurar nuestras comunidades, no necesitamos muros. Necesitamos tratar cada humano con la dignidad y respeto que merecen como humanos. What do you all think of that? What do we treat human beings like human beings going forward? Here's the deal. We are less than a month from the 22nd of October, the first day that each one of us can vote in the election that will decide the future and the fortune and the fate of this country. I told you, some polls have us a little bit behind. Some polls that just came out have us a little bit ahead. This one is going to be decided by you. We do not take a dime of political action committee money, no corporate help, no special interest. All people in every single one of the 254 counties of Texas. If there were ever a time to be alive and to have the ability to vote and decide the future of this country, it is right now. Are you committed to winning this election?